आज हम इस राज को समझेंगे. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to break down the actual anatomy of suspense by looking at a really specific, totally chilling sequence of events, the terrifying case of Hostel Room 307. We are going to methodically explore how a perfectly normal everyday environment can just instantly transform into an absolute nightmare. So pay close attention, because what we're uncovering today completely defies logic, and honestly, it's going to leave you questioning your own senses. Okay, let's dive into this, because this targets our most fundamental sense of security as human beings. You know, when we lock our doors at night, we just assume we're keeping the danger out, right? Like that physical barrier is our ultimate protection from the unknown. But what if the barrier you just locked isn't protecting you from the outside world at all? What if the threat is already locked inside with you? That right there is the core psychological terror we're unpacking today. We are talking about a cheap jump scare here. We're talking about the complete and total violation of your safe space. And it all kicks off in the most ordinary, relatable place you can imagine. Room 307. Just a totally standard, unassuming hostel room. I mean, think about how mundane this is. You've got a basic bed, a study table, a simple wooden closet. It's just a space designed for studying and sleeping, you know? A temporary home for a student trying to grind through their coursework. But I want you to picture that hostel late at night. There's that absolute dead stillness in the air. Maybe just the faint hum of a ceiling fan, shadows stretching across those thin walls. The narrator of our story lived right there, in 307, completely unaware that this supernormal number was about to become the epicenter of an impossible, terrifying event. And really, it's that absolute normalcy that makes the impending horror hit so much harder. So let's walk through how this tension actually builds. The pacing here is absolutely crucial. You go to sleep peacefully right around midnight. Then at exactly 2 in the morning, when the world is just dead quiet, your eyes snap open. That heavy silence is suddenly broken by a very distinct sound. Footsteps, pacing in the outside corridor. Imagine just lying there in the pitch black, staring at the ceiling, tracking those heavy steps right outside your door. And then, the escalation. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the wood. Knock, knock, knock. Now, this brings us to a terrifying contrast between what we expect to happen and what actually happens. When you hear knock at 2 a.m., your brain goes to a simple, logical conclusion. Someone is physically standing in the corridor. Maybe it's a friend who got locked out or the hostel warden doing rounds. But the reality? The narrator gets out of bed, opens the door, and looks out into an entirely empty hallway. Nothing but dead air, dim lights, and total, utter silence. This right here is where the whole inside versus outside motif of our story first starts to crack. That perfectly logical expectation of someone being out there is just met with this chilling, hollow void. So finding literally no one out there, the narrator closes and locks the door again. And you can almost feel that brief, fleeting moment of relief, right? A quick nervous exhale, maybe you just chalk it up to a prank or the wind. But the second they turn around and walk back toward the bed, that relief is completely shattered. Because sitting right there, completely undisturbed on the study table, is a mysterious piece of paper. A piece of paper that absolutely, 100% was not there when they went to sleep at midnight. So the crucial point is, the message actually written on that paper, it read, Darwaza mat kolna, do not open the door. I just want you to let the sheer, suffocating horror of that impossible warning sink in for a second. It isn't just a threat, it's a desperate instruction. But it's this massive paradox, because it's an instruction the narrator only finds after they've already opened the door to check the hallway. The timing is completely inverted, and man, that is what makes it so deeply unsettling. Let's actually break down the terrifying logic of what's happening in this exact moment. As the narrator is standing there, this cascade of horrifying realizations hits them. First, that note was somehow already inside the locked room. Second, the warning came way too late. Third, the door had already been opened, which means they might have just let something in. Or worse, let something out. And finally, the ultimate question that makes the narrator's hands literally start to tremble. If the note on the table was a warning not to open the door, then who or what knocked on it from the outside just 2 minutes ago? In a split second, the entire illusion of safety inside room 307 just completely dissolves. There is no safe space left. And just as that paralyzing fear really takes hold, the dead silence of the room is shattered once again. 3 loud knocks echo through the room. But wait, this time, the acoustics are entirely different. They aren't muffled by the thick hallway door. The narrator realizes with this intense mounting dread in their stomach completely dropping, that this heavy, hollow thudding is coming from inside their own room. Specifically, it's coming from the wooden closet, the almari. Imagine the agonizingly slow pace of this moment, the shallow breathing. The narrator is absolutely terrified, but they walk toward that closet, reach out for the handle, and slowly, so fearfully, pull the door open. And inside that dark closet, nothing. There is no physical intruder, no monster jumping out of the shadows at them. Instead, sitting right there in the dust is just an old faded photograph of former hostel students. Honestly, it feels almost anticlimactic at first glance, doesn't it? It's just this forgotten piece of history left behind by whoever lived in room 307 decades ago. Your heart rate might even start to slow down a bit. But now, what's really interesting about this slide is what's hiding in the tiny, easily overlooked details of that vintage image. As the narrator picks up the photo and looks closer at all those black and white faces of complete strangers from the past, their blood runs absolutely cold. Because standing way in the back, tucked right there among those former students from years and years ago, is the narrator themselves. And this brilliantly illustrates what we're calling the paradox of room 307. It is the completely impossible, mind-bending reality of staring at your very own face in a faded, decades-old photograph taken in a place you are supposedly visiting for the very first time. It's like time and space have just totally folded in on themselves inside this single room. Which brings us staring right into the void of this final, massive question. We've traced the anatomy of this suspense step by step, but the logic completely breaks down right at the end. If the narrator had genuinely never set foot in that hostel before that night, how on earth could they exist in that old photograph? Was it some kind of warning from a past self? And honestly, more importantly, who left the warning note on the table? And who was doing the knocking from the inside of the closet? Ye सवाल मैं आपके लिए छोड़ता हूँ. I'm going to leave you to think about that the next time you hear a late-night knock at your door, or, whenever you have to open your closet in the dark. Keep questioning what you see around you and stay curious.